So far in my fantasy football series, we've looked at the wide receivers and running backs. In this video, let's talk about the top quarterbacks in the fantasy draft. We'll talk about who I like, who I don't like, and my general strategy for this position of players. Like in the last two videos, here are the rules for these rankings. My rankings are based on a 12-team league. This team features a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, flex kicker, and a defense. For scoring, this league is based on your half-point PPR league. Passing touchdowns are worth 4, and all the other general rules apply. Now, if your league uses a 6-point passing touchdown, then obviously all of the quarterbacks should be increased in relative value. Also, if your league has different settings than the ones listed above, I also have the following rankings listed on my Patreon as well. Sign up to get access to all those files. The last thing I'm going to say is that if you need a custom sheet because your league has weird scoring, I'll happily make that for you for your upcoming draft. Just send me proof by email that you're a donor, and I'll get that to you as soon as I get a chance. With the rules out of the way, let's talk about my Tier 1 quarterbacks. This tier features Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. These are 2 of the top quarterbacks in the entire NFL, and they both score a ton of points in fantasy. For Lamar, it comes down to the combination of his passing and running ability. Even though he likely won't put up 1,200 rushing yards again, as long as he ends up with 800 or 900, that obviously still offers a ton of value in your team. I feel like his loss in rushing yards will be replaced by passing yards this season. While this is definitely a positive in terms of actual quarterback development, it's a negative in terms of fantasy. That's just how the scoring works in this format. For Patrick Mahomes, he's clearly the best quarterback in the entire NFL. I recently did a video on him on this very channel, so definitely check that out when you get a chance. For fantasy, he's definitely getting a bit overdrafted, however. He's a guy that I'll consider around the 3rd round, but I wouldn't take him any sooner than that. Before we move on from the screen, the column headings are the following. We have the base level information like player, team name, and bye week, but we also have RK, which stands for my ranking. We have ADP, which is their average draft position, and we also have diff, which stands for the difference between the ADP and my ranking. We can use this difference to determine relative value. The final column is their auction value, which is based on your standard $200 league. In fantasy, quarterbacks just simply aren't as valuable as they are in real life. With that being said, let's move on to Tier 2. In this tier, we have a ton of really talented players, but truthfully, I just don't see a ton of steals or pure value in this tier. Dak is probably the best in terms of fantasy just because he'll be throwing the ball a ton next season with Mike McCarthy. I broke down his 2019 season in detail on this channel as well, so definitely check that out. Another player I really like is Kyler Murray, but my issue is that it seems like everybody really likes Kyler Murray. This is already factored into his ADP. He's a guy that's going a full round earlier than I would personally take him. Now, he's the type of guy that could finish as this year's number 1 or number 2 quarterback, but in terms of value, he's a guy that I might just avoid because I just don't want to overdraft him and miss out on a better player. The final thing I'm going to say about this tier is that I think there's a pretty clear drop-off in terms of fantasy value after Kyler Murray. So for me, I'll probably be taking a quarterback in round 6 or 7. However, if there's a run on this position in say rounds 4 or 5, don't stress, just grab a lower ranked quarterback in my next tier. No reason to sacrifice your entire team for this position this year. Let's move on to Tier 3. In this tier, I feel like all these guys are potential low-end starting quarterbacks in fantasy. Matt Ryan and Tom Brady are top 2 of this tier. Out of all these players, it honestly feels weird saying this, but I think Brady might be the best value pick in this entire position. He has some awesome weapons at his disposal, and the Bucs should be a serious threat this season. I can't wait to break down this team in detail. The last guy that I'm going to talk about in this video is Cam Newton. I think he's in a pretty good overall situation in terms of fantasy potential, but you do have to worry about his health. Also, you have to worry about the relative lack of weapons around him. I feel like he's going to have some really good games, but unfortunately, I also think he's going to have some serious duds on his hands as well. He's a guy that I like at the very end of this tier. In terms of my overall strategy, my goal is to aim to take a quarterback in the middle rounds of this draft. Round 6 or round 7 seems to be the right spot for a Tier 2 type of guy unless one of the top 2 quarterbacks falls to round 4. Even though that could happen, I just don't personally expect to take an upper tier quarterback this season. As always, quarterback is the one position that you really should look into bye week options before you draft your quarterback. For example, I mentioned Dak Prescott earlier. His bye week is week 10. Looking at the week's slate of games, I see a few potential fantasy targets that you could replace him for that week. Washington against Detroit could be a really good one as Dwayne Haskins improved a lot as a rookie while the Lions defense is pretty bad. Meanwhile, Sam Darnold against Miami and Drew Lock against the Raiders all could be really good matchups. I'd consider all 3 of these options, so just stash your favorite quarterback on your bench until week 10. While we won't break down the rest of the players available, it shouldn't be too difficult with a little bit of planning to make sure you're protected all season. The lower the round quarterback that you take for your team, the more likely you should take a second quarterback that has a higher upside in order for you to rotate throughout the season. Look out for whatever team plays Miami, Oakland, Cincinnati, Jacksonville, or Detroit, as all those games could turn into really good matchups. To wrap this up, my rankings are available in Excel on my Patreon. Only a $1 a month donation gets you full access to all those files. As I said before, if you need a custom draft sheet since your league has weird scoring, send me an email with proof that you're a donor, and I'll happily create that before your draft. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be back again with my rankings of the tight ends. Take care and follow me on Twitter at Samuel R. Gold.